Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Grace for the Journey. I'm your host, Sharanda, and it's glad to have you back joining us once again. I trust your journey has been going amazing. Here on Grace for the Journey, we are in the middle of a series called The Hardest Thing I've Ever Been Through Until It Was Not. And we're just discussing, or I'm sharing rather, some of the experiences that I've had that I thought was the worst things ever until the next things came and I thought they were the worst things ever. This is something that many of us, if not all of us, go through because usually when you're in something, it's hard to see anybody else's situation. It's hard to see your way out. It's hard to see pretty much anything other than how magnified and how huge your story is at that time. But I'm just sharing a little bit more about me so we can understand the reason why I push so hard in helping people and wanting people to see the other side of their story, and just to really, reassure you guys that I get it. Like, I've not experienced every single thing, but there's some situations that I've experienced that really, it's basically, let's put it like this, it's hard to come out of. So when I am pushing and I'm like, you got this, you can handle this, like, it's coming from a sincere place of, I've been there and I want to see you see the end. Not a place of, oh, I got out of it, so you better get out of it too, but more of a place that I feel you, I get you, I understand, but I know that you are stronger than you actually think you are right now in this moment. Just because, yeah, I get it. So the last episode we were talking about pretty much my first two pregnancies and how motherhood came to take me out, like literally came to kill me. That's how I felt. But we're gonna dive a little deeper into more of my story, and I share some more details in some of my books. I don't even remember which one has which stories now, but you'll find a lot of stories and a lot of things I experienced in those books. And I never want to come from a place of do this and do that, and this is a guide to get here and a guide to get there. But one thing I've learned, and I shared this in the last episode as well, is that our experiences, our stories are not for us alone. And when we agree to share them with other people, they get to see how we overcame, right? They get to see how we handling it in the moment, maybe. They get to see that, you know what, I'm not alone. I'm not alone. So I challenge you to, as you go through, don't just look at it as like this thing that's just happening to come to kill you, right? Think about it as one day this will be a memory, and one day this thing I'm going through, if I persevere, once I persevere, I'll be able to help somebody with it. So I basically shared like how my first two pregnancies resulted in babies being in the NICU and how I was not able to, experience that first feeling of motherhood, that the baby goes in your chest and, you got this aha moment and all the music starts playing in the back. Like, I didn't have those experiences, but life went on. We had other wonderful experiences, but for me, that was something that I really wanted, and I felt like I was deprived of that. But going further, so now here we are. I got two kids, married with two kids now, and I feel like it maybe 4 years later, we found out that we were pregnant again. First of all, that was unexpected, but children are a blessing, so we took it on, and I started my prenatal journey. Things were going great for a couple of weeks until one day it was not. And I remember, pardon me for TMI and for being a little bit, detailed, but I remember one day I noticed I was spotting, and from what I know, you're not supposed to be bleeding while pregnant. I know some people go through that, but in my case, I had not experienced it before. So I go to the hospital, and it was a Sunday evening. And the hospitals on the weekend, sometimes, I'll just leave it there. So I go there, and we're in the emergency room. And there was not really a rush. And looking back in hindsight now, I understand why. But, got in the room, explained what was happening. They did some blood tests and all this stuff. And I thought they were going to send me for this rush ultrasound to see what is happening, and they did not. And so I remember the doctor was like, okay, well, we're going to schedule an ultrasound for you tomorrow. I think it was like at 1 o'clock or something. And he's like, we're going to schedule for that time because, the office is closed or something along that line. Basically, what he was saying, it was only available for emergencies. And at that point, they already knew it was up and they knew it wasn't an emergency. So I left. And then when I woke up, there was a lot more. It was not spotting anymore. So I rushed back there. And I remember the doctor saying to me again, not the same doctor, obviously, but they were like, yeah, this is why we schedule you because now you're going to have to wait a while, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, I ended up going and seeing, getting an ultrasound. And they don't tell you nothing, right? It's not their job. They just smile with you, make you comfortable, and you try to read them. The text, they're not saying anything because they just have to report to the doctor, and it's the doctor that's supposed to break the good news or the bad news to you, right? So I didn't know all of this at this time, so I just like, oh, she's happy, we're good. I don't know what's happening, but all things are gonna work together for my good. I'm telling you now, my faith was not nowhere where it is now. It was not the same level of faith. I was riding everybody else's faith except my own at this stage of my life, and so I remember leaving that ultrasound room, and at this point I probably would have been, I want to say, or should have been 12 weeks pregnant, something around that, and or maybe a little less. And they just sent me back to Emerge, and this doctor, like, I thought this was the most insensitive thing ever, but I realized this is just the way it is. This doctor just pulls me in the corner of the emergency room. There's no separate room. There's no privacy, nothing. He just pulls me in the corner, and he just says, I'm so sorry. So the fetus, of course, it's not a baby. They don't call it a baby, right? So the fetus is not there's no heartbeat with the fetus, and it's not at the size it should be at this stage. So I'm sorry you've miscarried, and you're going to go home and experience like a heavy menstrual cramp, like a heavy menstrual cycle. So pulled me in this corner and simply said, I'm so sorry, the fetus is not what it should be, and you're going to go home, have a heavy period, and you're going to pass the baby. And I was like, oh, okay. Here I am once again, the hardest thing I've ever experienced, until it was not. I tell you, first of all, I felt so like you just pulled me in the corner, like I'm here by myself. You didn't say, like, do you have anybody with you? Because to me, this is loss, right? To them, it may not be that level of loss. Because I know in the medical world, there's a certain stage before they consider a fetus a baby and blah, blah, blah. I won't get into all of that. But this is my child that you just pull me in the corner and say, oh, you're going to go home and pass this child out. So emotionally, I was a wreck, like a complete wreck. Thanks to the support as to my pastor's wife, specifically at that time. I remember she held my hand through that journey very, very closely during that stage, and was continuing speaking life. My mom as well, she had experienced quite a bit of these situations herself, and she was able to help me out of it and get out of that rut. But going home that day, this is what made it really hard. When that man said that I was going to experience cramping and a period, he didn't tell me I was going to go home and full on have contractions. And because I had 2 C-sections before, I did not know what real contractions actually felt like. So I'm just thinking, oh, just going to be a period. Oh, and that pain hit me. Oh, it was the hardest thing I've been through until it wasn't. And what made it more difficult was my son was turning 5, I believe. So my firstborn that I talked about in the last episode, he was turning 5, and the next day was his party, and I had to endure through that pain during this party because I had to show up, right? I had to show up for him, he didn't know what was happening. And I remember just being like, hold my breath as the pain came, and then it would leave and I'd be able to continue. And there's another significant thing that happened, and I'll preface it by saying this. When you're going through something, as much as possible, and I know it's not always possible depending on the magnitude and, as much as possible, if we're able to look outside our little box, even for a moment, and see who we can help in that moment, sometimes it makes it all better. You may not feel like it, but you be the people that I was called to help during that time, literally at that time of being actually in pain. Like when I look back at it, I'm like, seriously, God, like I'm going through this, and you having these people call me. And I remember a close friend called me at that time, and I hadn't even got to share this situation with them yet, and they were pregnant, and they're calling me, and they know I had experienced doctors talking about my children being underweight during my pregnancy. And so they were calling about that. And I remember them calling, being like, the doctor's saying this. And they were very, very, very distraught. And if I was insensitive, I could have been like, yo, you're calling me for this and I'm going through this. But remember, when we're in something, it's the hardest thing we're going through, and we're not able to usually, unless we're very conscious about it, we're not able to see outside of that situation. And I remember it only could have been God's grace. I was able to compose myself, hold that pain in, and not divert their situation that they're experiencing and start talking about myself. Because sometimes we can do that, right? And I remember helping them through that. Like God used that situation for me to share my past situation and encourage them, even in that moment that I was like going through it. And I didn't realize it then. I just thought I was being a friend. And then later, we circle back to it. And I'm like, when you called me, this is actually what was happening. But that's usually how it is. Sometimes, like I said already, our story is not just for us. And that's what I know for sure. Like, we're stronger than we actually think, because you think that you just want to wallow up all the time. But sometimes that strength comes out. And even when you're going through it, God will use you to help other people through their situation, whether they're going through the same thing or they're going through something that you have been through, right? So, yes, the thing is big. Yes, the thing came to take you out, but it's more to it. Life is more than that situation, and something good is going to come out of it. And you find strength, like I said before, you get stronger and stronger, because guess what? The situations, the trials, they don't get smaller. You just get stronger, but you don't realize it until after you've overcome. So, yeah, that was the first time I guess I would have experienced loss in that way, to have carried a child in my womb, and then for the child to no longer just be there. So that was the first time, I guess, the closest loss I would have experienced. But I got through it, and I'm not gonna act like I got through it by myself. That was the beginning of me learning that I needed a village. Like I said, the support of those around me, the support of my mom specifically, who had been through that a few times, well, too many times, I'd say, and was able to tell me what to expect, and how she got out of it, and how she did not fall into depression from it. So I get it. And to be honest, this is something that's not talked about a lot. You'd be surprised how many women actually experience miscarriage, but it's like this taboo thing. You feel like, I did something wrong, I didn't eat right, I jumped too high, I did this, I did that, I shouldn't have exercised, I should have exercised, I ate too much of this, I didn't eat enough. And we start to blame ourselves. But it's something that's not shared a lot, and you can feel alone. It's something that can really have you feeling alone. And more people would, like, not when you're angry, maybe not share exactly when you're angry, unless there's a platform for that, for a safe space, where you can do that. But if more people are aware of that, if more women were aware of that, this happens more times than you think, and you're not to blame, I think we'll be doing a lot more better as a society, as a female association, if that makes any sense. But that was the next hardest thing I had been through, until it was not. But that situation groomed me and helped me for what I didn't even know was about to come. So I'm going to leave a cliffhanger there. If you want to know what happens next, tune into the next episode. See you guys later. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. I never thought I would actually be saying that, but it's actually kind of fun. See you guys.